Good afternoon, everyone. I will call the Audit and Finance August meeting to order. Before we proceed, we need to make a few adjustments on the agenda. So we have a couple guest speakers, well, not speakers, but two attorneys to talk us through some of the information that's on our agenda. So I would like to move let's see, the fall tax anticipation note, that will stay where it is, right? Okay, so we're moving the executive session, the three items on executive session up to number 5. So it will come between 4 and 5 so that we can have the attorney talk to us on a contractual matter, and rather than going out and coming back in executive session, we will just take all 3 executive session items at the same time. Does anybody have any questions about that? If not, can I get a motion to amend the agenda accordingly?
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the July 13th. July 13th, does anybody have any corrections or amendments to the minutes? If not, may I get a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I make a motion to approve the July minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm abstaining because I wasn't there.
Okay, so Mr. Kennedy and Ms. Clark, I think Ms. Clark is on the phone, are going to talk to us about the fall tax anticipation notes.
Thank you, Ms. Green. So as you said, Carol Clark, who is the district's bond attorney, she will talk to the committee about the annual tax anticipation note. It is to handle the cash flow from between the time that the fiscal year starts and when tax collections begin and from the county in late fall. So Ms. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Good afternoon, everybody. As Don just said, we issue the tax anticipation note every year to just simply facilitate cash flow timing, really, because as you know, property taxes are not due until January 15th, and typically the district would experience a shortfall usually in November if we don't issue the TAN. So it's basically borrowing in anticipation of the collection of the property taxes just to get over the hump in the funding shortfall. This year, we're asking the board to authorize not exceeding $60 million. Jackie and Don can speak more to that, but some of the uncertainty, I think, is due with the timing of the receipt of some federal funding, COVID-related funding. But this is, as I said, it's borrowing in anticipation of the taxes. This will be paid back out of property tax collections on April 1st of next year. So it's just a very short-term funding just to help with cash flow. Does anybody have any questions?
Don, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'll elaborate just shortly about the increase. So in the prior 2 years, the TAN has been probably roughly $30 million as a maximum amount. And so obviously this is far exceeds the experience that we've had in the last 2 or 3 years. Over the last 2 or 3 years, because of the increase in the fund balance, we've been able to reduce the need for cash in the fall. It used to be prior to maybe 3 years ago, The TAN, I think probably the maximum I saw was like around $70 million. So we are taking that down to, again, around 30 million. But this year, as Carol indicated, because of the additional federal funds that are coming in from the COVID-related, the ESSER 2, which is the COVID-related federal dollars, we will have additional expenditures that we have not had in the last several years. And so this is to accommodate the payments for those, because in order to get reimbursed from the state for those federal funds, we have to incur the expenditures and then apply for reimbursement. And so this is the reason why the TAN increase for this fiscal year.
I have a question. Is there ever an instance where this could become a debt? I know your notes say that this is not a debt obligation, but could it be a situation where your anticipated collections from the ad valorem and the reimbursements from state or wherever you anticipate getting this money doesn't come in as expected? Could some of this become a debt?
Don, I'll answer that if you'd like. Looking back at last year's tax collections from the 2019 to 2020 fiscal year, the tax levy for the school district was almost $600 million. And here we're talking about borrowing somewhere in the range of 30 to 60. So the total levy so far exceeds what we're borrowing that no, there's no chance of that. I mean, typically the current percentage, the percentage of current taxes collected ranges from 95 to 97%. And we haven't seen any change in that even with COVID last year. And so there's no chance that this would become any sort of long-term debt.
And then in response to the question about reimbursement from the state, we do not expend the funds up front and before a state approval. So before we even expend funds, we submit a spending plan to the state. The state has to approve the plan, and then we expend the funds and then simply apply for reimbursement after the fact.
Any other questions from the committee members?
I have a question. Don, we've discussed ESSER funds at every board and committee meeting roughly twice a month since March. And this is the first time I think that we've discussed the fact that we have to expend those funds prior to getting reimbursed. And that not necessarily for us because we have the capacity to send out a TAN for 60 million, but we're talking about all the school districts in South Carolina. Is every district in South Carolina having to go out and borrow funds in order to access their ESSER 2 funds?
So again, well, this is not to access the funds. This is just for us to pay for expenditures that we have incurred.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Does every district have to go out and borrow money in order to then submit for reimbursement of these funds? There's no disbursement.
I would say no. Not all districts. All federal funds that we expend, any district in the state expands, we have to go through the same process where we submit a spending plan, then we apply for a reimbursement after after the funds have been expended. But I would anticipate that every district would have to go out for this type of reimbursement. But bonds. But certainly some of the larger ones, I would say yes.
So this is a requirement of the State Department for Charleston County School District, and it may not be the same requirement for, say, an Orangeburg 3 or Spartanburg 2 or some small district without this capacity. I'm just a little surprised that the ESSER funds are being distributed this way, given the lack of financial capacity in some of our districts in the state.
I'm sorry, Ms. Coates. I'm not able to respond on all the other districts. I don't know.
But is this a requirement of the State Department to CCSD?
It is a requirement of applying for reimbursement for federal grants that are awarded. So for instance, our Title I dollars, the same, it follows the same pattern. We submit to the state a Title I plan, expenditure plan. We expend the funds and then we apply for reimbursement. So for CCSD, it's following the same process that we use for other funds.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion regarding the tax anticipation note.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carolyn, thank you again for helping with this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and now I will entertain a motion that we go into executive session.
So move.
Second.
So that will allow those people, I guess there's something for them to indicate they're going to a meeting room or something, right? Pardon? So we are out of executive session. We had discussion, no votes were taken during executive session. But I will entertain a motion on the contractual matter that is listed on your agenda as item 11.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Ayes have it. Motion is carried. I will now entertain a motion on item 12. That's on your unamended agenda.
Can Angela read us the motion? I think somebody had a prepared motion, and we had some questions about that.
Is Angela on or Jeff?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay.
The motion is to approve to amend the MOU with Charleston County Parks and Recreation and allow use of Building 54 by the Lincoln Regional Center.
I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the item listed as item 13 was information only. Okay, so with that, we will now go back up to the item that's listed as item 5, external audit overview. And I think we have someone from the audit firm that's going to be talking to us. Is that right?
That is correct, Ms. Green. So we have the audit partner that's working with us through Green Finney, Emily Sobczak. She has briefed, had discussions with Jackie Carlin and with me, also with Dr. Postlewaite, and also with Ms. Green as the chair of the committee. And now she's going to discuss the audit, upcoming audit that they're involved with for the FY21 financials. So Ms. Sobczak, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Emily Sobczak. I'm the audit partner with Green Finney that will be overseeing the district's financial statement audit for this year. And we think that a key part of having a successful audit is having good communication, both with management as well as with the board. We're so excited to be working with the district again. This is my hometown district. This is the district that I grew up in and that my children are growing up in. And so the district's success is incredibly important to me. And so, like I said, we think communication is very important. And that's why I'm here this afternoon, because I'd like to give you just kind of a refresher, an overview of what the financial statement audit entails and what that process looks like. And then I would like to hear from you any questions or concerns that y'all might have as we are in this audit planning process. So a financial statement audit, as you'll probably recall, entails us auditing the district's financial information and issuing an opinion. So the best opinion that the district can get, that unmodified, clean opinion, provides reasonable assurance that the financial statements are materially correct. So it is important to keep in mind that when we're talking about a financial statement audit, we're not auditing every single transaction that occurred during the year, nor are we adjusting balances to the dollar. We're using materiality and professional judgment in designing our audit procedures in order to give us sufficient assurance to provide that opinion. In addition to the opinion that's in the front of your financials, you also have two other opinions at the back of the financials. The first describes our responsibilities in performing the audit in accordance with government auditing standards. And that's where if we identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls or any significant non-compliance, if we identify any of those during the financial statement audit process, we are required to document them there. And then the third opinion that's in your report will be an opinion that is provided based on our performance of an additional compliance audit that's required by the uniform guidance. And so that is what is required for entities that expend greater than $750,000 in federal awards in any given year. And so of course the district always requires that additional single audit because you do exceed that threshold each year. And so that audit will entail us selecting, based on the federal guidelines, certain federal programs to do kind of a deeper dive and really test your internal controls over compliance and whether you are complying with the federal requirements related to those programs. And so as you probably remember from past audits, that may entail us looking at Title I or IDEA, child nutrition. This year, of course, part of our focus will be on the funds coming from the stimulus monies. And so those additional funds that you got from the CARES Act and from the American Recovery Plan, those will certainly be part of our focus for this year's single audit. And so in that third opinion, if we do identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses over in internal control over compliance related to those federal programs, or if we identify any non-compliance, then that would be documented in the back of that report and in that opinion. And so that will be the result of our audit. Of course, a lot of hard work goes into preparing for the audit. That's what's done on the district side. And then, we will be performing our field work starting in mid to late September and hopefully completing it in October. And so that's kind of a rundown of what we'll be doing, but I'd love to hear from y'all any questions or concerns you may have related to the audit process or any areas that you'd like us to kind of put some additional attention on this year.
Thank you, Emily. Are there any questions or comments for Emily?
Emily, how many staff will you have on an audit of this size?
We will have, so I'll be the partner. We'll have a manager. We will also have a supervisor and probably in any given week, 2 to 3 staff.
Any challenges in keeping and retaining staff in this market?
Well, I think that is a challenge that regardless of your industry, I think that's something that we are all dealing with. We have been quite fortunate in that we have not had significant turnover in recent years, but it does happen time to time.
Thank you.
Will you be on site auditing or doing this virtually?
We will be doing kind of a combination. Anything that we can complete off-site, we will plan to do that. But there will be, certain things that will require us to spend some time on site. And so we'll try to find a nice balance there.
Any other questions, comments for Emily? Emily, thank you for coming on and making the introduction, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. And if there's anything that you'd like to bring to my attention at another time, please feel free to reach out to me. Don and Jackie both have my contact information, and I'd be happy to hear from you. So thank you.
Certainly will. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Head Start Annual Financial Report. Ms. Foxworth.
Good afternoon, board chairs, committee chairs, Dr. Postlewaite, Mr. Kennedy, and the committee members. My name is Kim Foxworth. I'm the Executive Director of Early Childhood School Readiness Programs. I have the responsibility of facilitating the Head Start, Early Head Start grant, as well as the Child Development Program. We were here a couple months ago. We are starting our new Head Start grant, 5-year grant as of this fall. Part of the Head Start requirements, the Office of Head Start requires us for the governing body, which is our Board of Trustees, to annually review our financial reports. And so this is something we're doing, and that is what is in front of you. The Head Start grant is a little different than the school year calendar. It goes from June 1st to May 31st. And so what you see is our report that we ran to end of June. We have until August 31st to liquidate all of our funds. And so if you would see this report in September, we'd be at 100% all the way around because we do have some funding that we're spending through the summer. One thing you're going to note is indirect costs that goes back to Charleston County School District. That occurs after we liquidate our account and liquidate the grant at the end of August. So I'm open to any further questions you may have. This is just for information, and you'll be getting this. Right now, we're looking at a 2-time-a-year schedule.
Any questions from the committee members for Ms. Foxworth? If not, Kim, thank you very much. Yeah, and go spend those funds.
Oh, they're spent.
Okay. The next item is the fiscal year 22 SWMBE plan. Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Walter. I don't know who's starting this. Don, you.
Yeah, Wayne, are you on?
Yes, sir, I'm on.
Go ahead.
This plan here is for fiscal year 22. It's showing that we budgeted $110,000 for repair, maintenance, and operation type goods and services. And our plan is to spend 20% of that, which would equate to a little over 22,000 for operation and maintenance type goods and services. We budgeted right at about $5 million for $5.8 million for information technology type goods and services, which we plan to spend 1.1 million of that with SWMBEs. We budgeted 31 million for academic and administrative types of goods and services, which we plan to spend 6.3 million of that with SWMBEs. And our last is the capital construction and maintenance type of goods and services, which we budgeted 71.9 million. And our goal is to spend 30 million of that with SWMBs, which we've targeted right at about 43% with SWMBs in fiscal year 22. And we have a number of outreach efforts that we plan to do in fiscal year 22. We plan to sponsor Minority Business Fair at Bridgeview, and we'll continue to participate in business fairs sponsored by the Carolina Virginia Minority Supplier Development Council, which, matter of fact, we have a conference going on, which I've been a part of today. And also we plan to work with the South Carolina Association of Purchasing Officials and to participate in the local North Charleston Reverse Trade Show. Those are the things that we have planned for this coming fiscal year. And I want you to note that what we have budgeted, these are just estimates. They could go up or down during the year.
So I would add also, historically, going back a few years, the percentage goal has been 20%. When you aggregate the 4 areas that Wayne presented here and aggregate all those dollars, the actual goal for this year then becomes 28% because of the 43% with the construction and capital maintenance. And if the committee will recall, last fall, the committee asked staff to look at increasing our percentage goal. Actuals last year, I think, was roughly the 28%. And so we committed to doing the disparity study, which is underway now. We will take a look at the numbers here, especially on the maintenance and the repairs, even though we have presented to you a target of 28% once aggregated, where we may have opportunities to increase the goal. We will do that in head of the disparity study where possible.
So have you been successful in previous years in meeting your goals?
We have. So each October, we present to the Audit and Finance Committee and to the board the participation by SWMB, so the prior fiscal year. So we'll do that in October this year. What was presented last October showed that we did meet our goal of 20% when you aggregate across the work.
And if I recall correctly, this is a continuation of the discussion we had back then, which was to set an aggressive goal for increasing that percentage. And it's not a cap, and it's not a minimum, but it's a target that would be higher than if we set a minimum at moving to 25%. That's one thing. But if we set a target, we just wanted to push that number as forward as we could, but doing it as they've done on a kind of on a bottoms up level based on looking at opportunities out there. Is that a fair characterization?
It is correct.
Yes.
Any other questions? I've kind of shared my thoughts with Mr. Kennedy about kind of what Kim just mentioned, that we look at those figures a little bit more aggressively as we move forward. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Wayne.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Business systems metrics, Mr. Kennedy?
So I'm sharing my screen. I'd like to get confirmation that you can see it, someone can see it. So on the business system metrics update, which we do quarterly, this is an attempt, the business systems to improve the efficiency of how we use our business systems and the processes associated with those systems. As was reported last quarter, we had completed the upgrade from the Kronos timekeeping system to what the title company is calling Dimensions. I'm sorry, the Kronos company is calling Dimensions, which is their updated, most recent platform for time and attendance. That upgrade is, as I indicated, is complete. Last time that we reported, we were having some implementation issues. Most of those have been handled. We still have some minor ones out there we're still working on, like reporting and training. But at any rate, the Dimensions system is proven to be more user-friendly for our end users, principals, et cetera. The P card, looking at using the Munis system to more effectively manage the P card system. We're working with the P card provider, Bank of America, to effectively collect the data that's needed for testing. So that's ongoing. The bookkeeper support, that was a big initiative that we had contemplated prior to the pandemic that looked at elevating the statute of I think about 10 bookkeepers across the district, with the ultimate attempt to look at how we could use those 10 to improve the work processes of bookkeepers throughout the district. And these are bookkeepers these are school-based positions that handle all of the input for financials that are coming out of the school. So it's a critical position. But because of the pandemic, that got delayed last year. And so we're looking at bringing that back into focus as we get into the new school year. And then the last part is look at the update of the FY22 audit plan. This audit plan is actually for the internal audit. And as you recall, we have contracted with the external audit firm of Elliott Davis to do a portion of our internal audits. And this table here then is from the report that Elliott Davis, is a subset of the report that Elliott Davis presented in their risk assessment of June, I think it was last year. So at the top here, the current projects that are ongoing right now, and it's showing who is doing the work. It's the CCSD, or it's the external audit firm. The P-card program is being worked by the district. Substitute usage at the schools for those are substitute teachers. Data entry that was associated with, part of that work was associated with the business upgrades, with systems upgrade with Dimensions. So we're getting back on track with that. And then the training process for business data integrity, that's associated with the bookkeepers that I mentioned a minute ago. Information technology, that audit has been almost wrapped up by Elliott Davis. They will report to the Audit and Finance Committee the results of that audit at the September Audit and Finance Committee meeting. Federal programs, they will do the federal programs for the fiscal year 22. Determination was to do that one in fiscal year 22 because of the influx of the COVID related dollars coming from the federal government. So we want to make sure that we have processes in place to properly capture those costs, capture and report those costs. And then the last one for the current project, it says payroll chrono systems upgrade. That actually should say an actual payroll audit. So Elliott Davis will also do an audit of the payroll systems and processes for fiscal year 22. So the two that they will do for fiscal year 22 are the federal programs and payroll. And the information technology will be reported out next month. Future projects shown here, as you can see what they are. And then at the bottom, what was completed most recently, FY20, agreed upon procedures for the capital programs and the contracts and procurement services audit that Elliott Davis reported out to the Audit and Finance Committee last month. What questions do you have?
This one.
Hey, Don. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just asking Don so that dimensions upgrade, was that going to fix the issue where they were having, where a teacher would fill out for leave and it wasn't matching up with the Kelly system, so there was no real, or automated process for them to validate that, a request for a substitute was linked into a teacher actually taking an approved leave?
That's correct. So there are two components to that process. One is the dimensions. So the work was on hold until we got the improvements were on hold until we got the dimensions upgrade done. And then the second part of that was a collaboration and integration of data with Kelly, the firm Kelly Services. And so we would be extracting data. Our business services people would be extracting data from Kelly into our systems here so that we could do exactly what you're saying, make sure that we had a handle on who was applying for substitute teaching and make sure that we had a valid reason for that.
Thank you.
Don, you all have a lot of experience and controls around managing requirements related to whether it's federal funding or state funding or otherwise. But with the stipulations around the COVID funding, do you anticipate anything unique or unusual in terms of your ability to ensure compliance with the requirements of that funding? Or do you think that will be fairly normal course from your control environment?
Well, I have some concerns, and the way I've started approaching those concerns is that in the ESSER 2 plan that we submitted to the state, we actually put in for 2 positions to compliance slash financial positions, and that's more so not because of control issues, but just volume. And so that has been approved by the state. So we have some folks working on the job description and beginning to do the hiring process.
Any other questions for Don? My question relates back to the bookkeeping support. Is that an automated process, or are they doing bookkeeping duties manually?
So it is. I think that the title bookkeeper that we use at schools probably doesn't. That title doesn't really reflect the duties that they do. So it's not doing so much accounting type bookkeeping, but it's all about systems that depend on. So for instance, we have the student information system, Power School, for attendance. The bookkeepers and the data clerks at the schools are responsible for that. That is a point of entry, and becomes critical that we get the data into the system correctly. And so for instance, our timekeeping system, those bookkeepers, they're responsible for making sure that staff at schools have their times recorded correctly, and so that the principal can appropriately review and approve. So it's more of data entry associated with data that flows up through our systems. And then in many cases, at least in some cases with the power school, with attendance, that flows right up to our 135-day count, which is the ultimate count in terms of student enrollment that we get funded by the state. So it becomes critical that we get accuracy, report cards, et cetera. So it's a lot of data input in making sure that the people that are responsible at schools for inputting that data understand the processes for getting it into our systems and making modifications where necessary.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions, Mr. Kennedy? Okay, the next item is the monthly transportation report, Mr. Lynch.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to present the transportation summary report for June 2021 and also share the end of the year data from the Office of Student Transportation. For June 30th, 2021, first student had a total of 431 drivers for 386 routes. We were able to attribute 140 hours of lost instructional time due to buses being late in June of 21, with the top 3 schools being Pinckney, Pinehurst, and Lang, with 84 hours, 43, and 7.9, with the top 3 reasons being driver-related, substitute driver, or tier 1 unloading, or substitute driver. And again, this report for the month of June was based on a total of 9 entries in our late bus log. Overall, again, for June, they were at 112% for staffing compared to what was required contractually. Our end of the year data ended up showing for a student averaging approximately 434 drivers. Coastal Bus Lines continues to service 11 of our bus routes, all of them being magnet routes, no issues with Coastal from a staffing perspective. Overall, for the 2020-2021 school year, we were able to attribute a total of 1,263 hours of lost instructional time for buses being late. That's a 89% reduction from last year where we were at 11,722 hours. Overall, the schools, as far as the breakdown for lost instructional time in school, is reflected in the following chart, with Academic Magnet High School being the number 1 with 356 hours, Pinehurst being second, and Charles Pinckney being third. The following pie chart shows basically a breakdown of what was the cause of our primary cause of our late buses, with traffic being number 1 at 40%. Overall, first student managed to, again, exceed where they needed to be. They averaged about 112% throughout the school year for their for staffing. So from a staffing standpoint, they did an excellent job, which again was reflected with our significant reduction in our lost instructional time. The pie chart reflected on this particular document will be updated on the actual board docs at the conclusion of this meeting. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I have 2 quick questions. I have first one comment. Fantastic. Again, just so glad to see the number of drivers relative to where they were, especially given the staffing challenges we're having in every other part of our world. Are they first question is, are they teed up well to retain that staffing level heading into the start of school? And the second question / comment is, certainly the lost instructional time is way down, and that's fantastic. Is there any way to communicate? You've already provided a lot of data, so I don't want to ask for more data. Sure. But in general, what percentage? I'm curious what percentage that is, because that's all the students on that bus for that amount of time that was late. So if it's 20 students and the bus was an hour late, that's 20 hours of instructional time. Is that how that's being calculated?
Yes, sir.
Right. So as a percentage of our total instructional time across the district, it's a really, really small percentage.
Extremely small. We can crunch those numbers, but it would be definitely a very low percentage in the grand scheme.
It might not, not a ton, but it might be at least showing one of those data points, just so people who do see it have some perspective on what that means. And again, kudos on keeping the drivers. Well,
and again, I definitely attribute that to first student putting their money what they said they were going to do. And they definitely did an excellent job of recruiting when it came, especially during the middle of a pandemic. So as far as your question regarding next school year, right now things look good. I will have a definitive number come Monday, because right now they're doing their their kickoff for the beginning of the year. So this is when they have all their drivers reporting in for their safety training. And this is where they really they know for a fact how many are going to return. If there is an issue with any with numbers being somewhat low, they have a plan to bring in drivers from out of town if need be. So they are aggressively recruiting still. They did an excellent story recently. They connected with one of our local media outlets and did an excellent job of trying to show the public that really it's not as daunting to drive a bus as one might think. So I thought that was an excellent idea. And so far, it's been a good relationship thus far.
Mr. Griffin, this is Jeff Broy. To your point, just a quick back of the napkin, it's probably over 20 million educational hours we're talking about here. If you just count the number of students on the bus, not the entire enrollment of the schools, but just who rides the bus in a normal year. So it is very small, but we obviously don't want any. We would ideally like to not have any loss of hours. And to the pie diagram, 40% of it's traffic. I know James has taken a hard look at the routes this year, and if we need to expand the times for some of those routes that have caused us greater lateness, pick up a little bit earlier so that they get to school on time, or modify the route. That's something James has taken a hard look at. And I do want to make one point that was on the cover of the agenda item. Our hope is that we'll provide this report to the board directly in the weekly updates in the future. I look back at the board direction back from 2015, and it just says to provide the board the information. And so I really want to take away from the audit and finance items that are most important to you all, and we'll take this report directly to the board in a informational item type setting, rather than to put it on the agenda items in the future.
Any further questions or discussion for the transportation team? Thanks, Mr. Lynch. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The next issue is the capital projects report. Ms. Costello.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to present the June 2020 capital projects report. The sales tax revenue collections for May for the 2017-2022 building program were 2.4 million above the projected revenue model. The expenditures for the program were $14.5 million. For the 2010-2016 capital building program, the expenditures were $389,000. For the capital maintenance 8% funding, the monthly expenditures were $2.3 million. Fixed cost of ownership 22 is underway and moving forward very well. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Ms. Costello? All right, thank you very much, as always.
Thank you.
So that concludes all of our agenda items. Are there any comments or questions from anyone before we move to the next? Dr. Postway?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Okay. So the next issue is the board agenda items. It would be the number 4, is that right?
Right.
Number 5.
No,
Not. Okay.
it'll be 4, it'll be number 7.
We aren't going to have the audit team come to the board to introduce themselves.
No, ma'am, not for the at the beginning, but at the end of the audit, they will come and present to the board the results of audit later this fall, late fall.
Okay. All right, 7, 4, 7,
10.
10,
And then the,
and then the executive session. Okay, if nobody has any questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion. Oh, I'm sorry, the next meeting is September 14th. And note that's probably a week later because of Labor Day, is that right? Yeah. So next meeting will be on September 14th. I'll entertain a motion that for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your lively discussion today.
Thanks all.